Have you ever heard somebody use the phrase, "Don't you wish you could know the good old days when you're in them"? Well, here at Klas Motorsports, we're trying to do just that. Hi, my name's Aaron Inman, and I'm the co-host of the Racing with Klas podcast with my good friend and our driver, Andy Jankowiak. But here, we're doing something a little bit different. We're chronicling the building of a race team, a chance meeting between two modified drivers from the Northeast and a man with a passion for racing. Welcome to the building of a race team. Today on the building of a race team, we sit down with our co-owner Kevin Lapierre to find out where his passion began for racing and what was that spark that led him to team up with Andy Seiss and Andy Jankowiak to create Klas Motorsports. So we talked to Andy Seiss in the last episode, Kevin, and kind of got his backstory, exactly how he got into racing. But what is it? Where does Kevin's story start out, and how did you get into racing, even as a fan?
Very young on. I'm going to say first race was early 70s, Riverside Park Speedway in Agawam, Mass. We had a neighbor who used to take his son every Saturday. And I piggybacked off of that. My dad wasn't a big sports fan. He worked a lot of hours and wasn't much into sports, and he never wanted to go. So Al, Big Al and Little Al, and I would go. Just the three of us, and we would meet Big Al, the dad's, all his friends that were there to watch the stock car races from the early 70s on at Riverside Park Speedway every Saturday night. And as kids, you got to ride the roller coaster that was attached to Riverside Park. You know, so you could do a couple of rides, and they had the figure eight races. So, you know, in the early years, it was probably just cool to go to ride the roller coaster, you know, during the break or before the race. And it was, you know, fun to watch the figure eights. But as, you know, within a couple of years, I became just hooked on the NASCAR modifieds. And we went every Saturday, season to season, until I want to say that I was, I don't know what year I moved from Holyoke, Mass to South Hadley, Mass. But somewhere around there, I want to say around 6th or 7th grade, 6th grade, we moved, and I lost that connection. I couldn't go as much with Al because even though we were only 10 minutes away, we weren't, you know, next door neighbors anymore. We lived next door. And I didn't have a car. My dad took me to very few races, and I was sitting in class one day when we were kids, getting to know, you know, the kids when I moved, and this one of my schoolmates, Bill Sutton, I heard him say something about his dad and him going to Stafford Speedway, or actually Riverside Speedway still, on Saturday nights. And so whether I was going to like Bill or not, I went up to him and said, "Hey, I want to be my best friend now. I need a ride to, you know, Riverside Speedway." And joking, but no, I don't know how it came by. We just started talking in school. We were in the same math class and different classes. And I said, "Man, I'm a big race fan. I hear you're going. I'd love to go if you ever want to go. I don't have a ride, you know, anymore." And Bill invited me, and it started to be the three of us, and then meeting his friends out there, you know, from Big Al going with his kid and us to Mr. Sutton, actually Big Bill. This was Big Bill and Little Bill, so it was Big Bill Sutton, and he in fact he had a 34 or 36 coupe that he had fixed up that was in his garage. That was his hot rod, and he would meet all his race buddies, and we would all go to Stafford with his dad. I'm sorry, to Riverside. And all of a sudden, I don't know, around late 70s, early 80s, Bill's dad said, hey, we're going to the big track. Like, we're going to the massive Stafford Motor Speedway, a full half-mile monster raceway. So we went up there for a Friday night race, or maybe it was a big race, one of their big Friday night races, like the Carrera 100 or something initially. And that was it. So then we started going Friday and Saturday nights with Mr. Sutton until the day that we got our license. And so 16, there might have been a year or so in there where we didn't go almost every week, but I got to tell you, it was close with Mr. Sutton every weekend, twice a week. And then when we got our license, I got my car before Bill, 72 Pontiac Catalina, and we put a bunch of racing stickers on it, and it ran. And I swear to God, only 16 and a half, that's what we did. And our teenage years consisted of, I think it was Thursday, because I know it would be Monadnock. I know it was Stafford Friday, Riverside Saturday, Thompson Sunday. And I think it was Monadnock or wherever it was on Thursday night. And so Bill and I were going 4 nights a week, plus every special event we could find, and sleeping in tents. We would drive to Oswego for the Bud Bod Classic in the early 80s and camp in a tent. Just two, 17-year-old guys in high school who would drive 5 hours, camp in a tent, and get up and just watch the cars go into the track. Huh? Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. You think back, that's what I was saying, as you ask and I reminisce, you're like, yeah. And back then, my parents were like, great, bye-bye, be like, hey, we're going to the, Oxford 250 in Oxford, Maine. Like, we went there for the first time. First time we went to Oxford 250, it was Jeff Bodine and Dick McCade battling it out. It was an amazing race. And we stayed there in a tent, drove up, drove back ourselves. No GPS, just a map, pencil, a car that barely ran. And in 80, it was, I forget what year was it, 83, I think our senior year, the year we graduated from high school, we brought my Pontiac Catalina up there, my 72 Pontiac Catalina. The stereo in it was worth more than the car. I had my triaxles and my subwoofer, and, windows would shake playing rock and roll. And we drove up there, and when we got to the hills up, in upstate New York and Oswego, the timing chain broke. And I didn't know it was a timing chain. It just started sputtering and backfiring, and we would be going up the hills, and it would barely be going putt, 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 putt up the hills. And we would get to the hill and then roll faster down the hill. But, I mean, back then the races were, I'm not saying they're not popular today, but there's no comparison. And when you went to Oswego in the 80s, it was a packed house. So there was a ton of people driving into the track for the weekend. And we had traffic backed up. I just remember that trip because I'm popping, trying to pull over enough to the side of the road, but no one wanted to pass because cars were coming both ways. Everybody was honking at us, and we're just backfiring over the top of the hill, come down the hill, and it just kept popping and popping right into the track, right up into the track. Then we turned left into the first campground we could find where they allowed tents. And it just kept backfiring until we got to where we wanted to camp, shut it off, and that was it. Set up our tent, and had to go to a payphone at the McDonald's there or whatever it was. Called my dad and Bill's dad and said, hey, you guys mind picking us up at the races Sunday, or Monday morning or something? Because we had school. School started either that Tuesday. Might have been Labor Day weekend back then. I'm trying to remember, but no, that was Stafford. But sorry, guys. And the and they're like, yeah, I guess we can. Where are you? I'm like, well, we're in Oswego, New York. My dad's like, literally every swear in the book, imaginable. So he and Mr. Sutton had to drive 5 hours up and back to pick us up. And I couldn't get the car fixed. I didn't have the money, and it wasn't worth it. So during that weekend, Bill and I spent the entire weekend stripping the car. So like in between races, we would remove the radiator, and then we would remove the tires, with the little jack. And then I'm trying to remember else we removed, radiator, jack. Anyway, we removed a bunch of parts to the car that I knew I could sell at a salvage yard. How we were back then about money. The stereo for sure, took everything out, got it all kind of separated and boxed up. And then we're like, well, how do we raise some more money? And believe it or not, this is 100% true story, because I knew the car wasn't coming back with us. I was just praying the track didn't figure it out, call me and bill me, because it wasn't leaving. It was staying there. And so I went and got a sledgehammer, and I sold all the drunk fans $1 to smash my car. And we sat there one night after, I think it was the mod race, at 18 years old, drinking beer, probably illegally, and people giving us $1 and just smashing the car with a sledgehammer. Some guys giving us $5 and $10 and just smashing it. And we made hundreds of dollars, probably more than the car's worth. And then Bill came and my dad and that in my grandfather's truck, and I'm like, wow, why didn't you take the station wagon? He goes, we took your grandfather's truck because we wanted to. I go, but there's only 2 seats up front, and they're like damn straight. So Bill and I sat in the back of the pickup truck 5 hours back with all the parts sitting on like the tires for 5 hours, with our parents sitting in the front turning around basically going, fuck you, you're the one that made us come get you. Deal with it. Hopefully you don't have pneumonia by the time you get back, because that's how loving parents were back then. And they love you, but you learned the hard way. So that's a story. But so Bill and I did that. I mean, we have tons of racing stories, just blast. And it wasn't just us. Like, we would do events where the whole tons of our high school friends would go to the track, and our girlfriends, and every girl we dated. It was like you'd lose a girlfriend. You'd start dating her. You'd be like, yeah, what are we doing Friday night? We're going to Stafford Motor Speedway. What are we doing Saturday night? We're going to Riverside Motor Speedway. What are we doing Sunday? We're going to Thompson. And she'd be like, I don't know if I want to be your girlfriend, but I understand. Next. It'd be like, next. So we did that for ever until work took over, until work slowly took over full time, and we were more limited in what we could do. But we still did a ton. I mean, we were the first race ever at New Hampshire. We were there camping. At that point, Bill was doing his own thing. I had other friends that were doing it. In fact, we borrowed a van from where I worked, because we didn't have a camper for the first New Hampshire race. Put a mattress in the back, 2 coolers. It was just a van, like a delivery van. 2 coolers. I think we brought like a bottle of water, because we thought the Busch Light beer, the 80 cases we bought, would be fine for thirsting our quench, in the heat. And 3 of us stayed in the back of that van with a couple of chairs and did the whole first New Hampshire race weekend. So we, I became a massive race fan, and it's kind of been that way since forever. There were some lulls, where I worked so much that I didn't go over the years, where I worked a ton and couldn't, but, it just meant I still went to races, just more like a normal fan might. But yeah, I used to live to get the Speedway Scene newspaper in, read everything about every race, everywhere. So yeah, so that's how it started as a fan. And, I'm sure it'd be completely different if my neighbor was a big, baseball fan. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
He just said you got to go, and I went. Well, this is unbelievable, this racing stuff. So,
if you're a core fan of Klas Motorsports, you know this. I'm not telling you something you don't know. But if you're watching this for the first time, I affectionately refer to all the guys that are from the East Coast, like Kevin and both Andys, and I refer to them as the modified guys.
Yeah,
which we will definitely get a T-shirt for this season.
We're gonna have to. Yeah.
Where did you specifically catch the modified bug, and what is it about modified racing that you guys all just love so much?
Well, Riverside was the modifieds. That was their main division. The coupes back then when we went. Billy Greco, Buddy Krebs. A lot of great drivers, and then you went into the Pinto Revolution. And there's just something about a modified, because even back then, to your point, we watched late models and, Busch North, whatever it was called. The NASCAR changes that name every week on that division. I think it's Arca East now. We run Arca, as you know. And so whatever it's evolved into over the years, but there's just something about a modified. I mean, from the old, more primitive to today's masterpieces. I mean, and I'm saying this with all the love in the world for Arca. I'm not saying that I don't love full body racing. I do. I think it's, I think I love all racing, everything, to a certain degree. I don't watch Formula One. I have no interest in Formula One. But for the most part, I love just racing. But that's a great question. The modifieds are just an amazing. Well, first of all, they were warriors beyond warriors, and you could say that about the super modifieds, because I'll admit the first time I went to Oswego Motor Speedway and saw the super modifieds in person, there, and I had, grew up on the modified, seen the super modifieds. I was like, okay, I thought these modified guys were warriors. These super modified guys are bonkers. Like, I mean, this just a motor sitting there rocketing around this winged, you know what I mean? Half IndyCar, half jet, around the track at speeds that blew your mind. But for me, with the modifieds, it was that perfect balance. Back then it was a body. It was a Pinto body or a Cavalier body or a coupe body. And it was just the way the car looked, the way they opened up the front end, and it just, you could see the motor and then what happened over the years with the way they offset the chassis and they offset the rear tires. If you look back, when people don't look close and they look at it and go, why does the, right side tire stick out so much more? Just to somebody that isn't really a fan. And anybody that I ever brought, when they got down close, they would just look at a modified as I brought friends and go, these are unbelievable. I mean, they're just like unbelievable race cars. And they, to me, were the perfect balance of speed, agility, and danger and side-by-side racing, because back in the 80s, they surely had their hint of danger. As you know, Andy, our drivers, Dad Tony was killed racing, and I was there the night he got killed. And that was, a time for racing where some changes did need to be made. We were losing way too many great drivers. One is too many, but it was just a tragic time. But it was just, for me, there was just nothing. And I don't care back then, when I watched the NASCAR race, a modified race, and then a cup race, I didn't think the cup drivers, what's today called the cup drivers, back when cup was starting to become popular, when the Daytona 500 was getting to go on TV and ABC and all that, even then they didn't hold a candle to the modified drivers. I promise. I know there are some great cup drivers from back then, but I will put Richie Evans, Bugsy Stevens, Fred DeCero, Maynard Troyer. I will put any of them against those Southern Cup drivers, and the modified drivers would have done circles around them on equal footing. The modified division, by far, when I grew up, had the best drivers, and it was the best racing. You know, the Spring Sizzler in the 70s and 80s, there was a point where the Spring Sizzler was the highest paying race per lap in all of NASCAR. You have to think about that as a modified race per lap, because it was only 80 laps, 80 green flag laps. And you'd show up at a modified race, and there, I mean, like, I don't remember but in those earlier years, and we need to get this back because those cars are out there. You'd show up at a modified race like the Spring Sizzler, and there would be 75 cars there, and I don't want to exaggerate, but definitely 60 plus cars there to qualify for a 24, 28, or 30 car Spring Sizzler field. And it was so big that you would have a non-qualifiers race that paid a race purse bigger than most races. And the non-qualifiers race winners were drivers like Jimmy Spencer, Greg Sachs. I mean, guys that ended up cup racing. So, to me, the modifieds, not only the drivers, there was no one that compared. I don't care. Dale Earnhardt, you could talk about anybody, but there was no one. I don't care. You take Jeff Bodine or Richie Evans, and I'm not trying to just separate those two out, but those two stand out obviously. That there were no cup drivers that hold a candle to them. I don't give a shit what you say. And NASCAR just chose to promote the Cup Series, more than the modifieds. A, because they're Southern, and the Cup Series is Southern, and B, because they're easier to put stickers on because they're bigger full body cars. But if it wasn't for that, the modifieds could easily be the best racing division in NASCAR today. So you're not going to convince me of different, So yeah, the racing was unbelievable. The finishes, the competition. It was just great.
Yeah, Dad had a buddy that took us to a dirt track that there used to be a good sized dirt track at the state fairgrounds in Oklahoma City, and his buddy worked for Exide Batteries, and they had a stock car, and we were going, and I remember seeing the full size cars and thinking these are really cool, and it's very only memory I could have of dirt racing. And the guy said, "Those are cool, but the sprint cars and modifieds are what make going to the racetrack fun." And the first time I saw sprint and modified race on dirt, I thought, well, this makes these full-size cars look terrible, because this is, as a kid, that's the most amazing thing you've ever seen in your life. And then when the big cars get out there, you go, well, this is kind of clunky, and it's not nearly as fast, and it's not as fun.
Well, yes, I mean, you take a picture of a cup car that in the early 80s, and then you put it next to the Troyer 6 and the Troyer modified, the original Troyer engineering cars when he first started, Maynard Troyer. Those were masterpieces compared to a cup car or whatever it was called then, a Grand National car, which was a full-body Buick or Chevy, with a motor in it, and there was no comparison. They were just things of beauty, and they are faster. They are faster than the Cup Series. They still today are faster. Go ahead, let's go to New Hampshire and unrestrict the modified, and let's go faster. So they're warriors, and they're great race car drivers. You look at what started to happen when the Northeast and I'm not trying to start a north-south feud, but I'm sorry, Northeast drivers are better than most Southern drivers. And you can put that on there and everybody can yell at me, or you probably shouldn't. So I'm going to ask you not to. I'm going to have to tease you, but come on, look at I'm sorry, but you just, it just, yeah, the skill set. Look at what happened once Jet Bodine got to the Cup Series, and then was invaded with your Jet Bodine, your Ron Bouchard, your Jimmy Spencer, your Greg Sachs, your Steve Park, your Mike McLaughlin, and I apologize for anybody. Oh, Rick Fuller, Jeff Fuller, those guys. Ted Christopher should have been a legendary Cup driver. They never ever give those Northeast drivers the break. To me, they shouldn't. And look at every crew chief that has made a legendary Cup driver, and who's the brains behind the teams. Jeff Gordon, Ray Everham, modified driver. Tommy Baldwin. Man, I'm leaving out a bunch. Sorry, it's been a couple of years, but you go through it. Those engineers, those folks. There's a Northeast connection almost everywhere to those successful Cup teams.
We talked to Andy Seiss. I gave him an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about you and what he respects about you. But when you started to, you got involved with Andy J Racing, and you guys started to talk about potentially what would eventually become Klas Racing. What is it about Andy Seiss that made you want to team up with him?
His good looks, I guess. I mean, he's such a good-looking guy. I quite honestly only knew Andy from he was becoming successful, winning in the modifieds and winning the Southern Modified Tour and becoming a champion, as I was during a time period when I wasn't able to spend as much time watching modified racing. So I knew who he was. I knew he won races. I knew he was highly competitive, and a great driver. But I didn't know any, near what I used to know about the modified driver. So it wasn't that. I had to do some research, but what you've asked is a great question, and I want to answer it sincerely. And the only way to do that is to walk through what I saw happen and just applying my instinctive, I've been working since I was 15. I've been on my own since the 90s with my own businesses. So, I've got a history of being able to see things and go, this is an opportunity. And I wanted to help Andy J race some Arca races, because of what I was asked to do, through some connections I had. And that was fun. And it was impressive. And I was like, wow, this kid pulling up in a broken down trailer, being pulled by a dually to run the Arca race, is got a well-prepared car, that ran darn fast at Daytona. And then said, hey, can we help you on another race? Let's do another race, so he ran great at Talladega. And, and then we did Bristol. I'm trying to remember the order. We did Bristol, or we did like 3 or 4 races, and I helped him. And they were great runs, a nice looking car. And at each race, Andy Seiss was there and Mike Dayton was there. And Andy was there because he helped Andy get the car. And Andy's crew, first of all, I want to say this. You couldn't ask for a better group of guys from a knowledge, dedication, personality, loyalty, passion for racing. They bleed it. Unbelievable group. So, you just want them to do well. And you want Andy to do well. Sometimes. No, I'm kidding, Andy. That was just a joke. He's sensitive, so we like to joke with him once in a while. But, we want Andy to do well. And I was just reading faces. And as I was watching as I added races, as I was watching it, I saw the car go. I saw Andy's natural talent still there. And I saw the team working hard. But I saw Andy Seiss slowly disengage and his facial expressions change. as he was helping as we went on doing races. And I saw Mike Dayton go from his traditional grumpy face with no talk to an even grumpier face with no talk to an even I know it sounds hard when you look at Mike to go, he had a grumpier face. Yes, there was, if you look close enough, you could see that extra grump in his face or level of frustration. I was like, okay, we're not running, you know? And I started to line up a couple sponsors, and we went to Kansas, and we got lapped, and we looked like idiots. I'm not saying we shouldn't have got lapped. It was, Ty Gibbs was running. Listen, that's a whole different story as to whether or not Joe Gibbs Racing should be in Arca. That's a whole different, hell no. Happy to debate that put everybody with NASCAR on this thing, and I'll debate whether or not somebody that owns a cup team should be running Arca. We'll talk about that. So I'm not saying that it was unacceptable to be lapped by Ty Gibbs. It was unacceptable to be lapped by most of the field and by Ty Gibbs 3 or 4 times, and it was just a total difference. I could tell at that time something was very wrong. And then I started to do my research on Andy Seiss and said, as I looked beyond, just him as the person there helping Andy J, while he was doing his cup thing and his Xfinity thing with the different teams he was with and how he was moving up the ladder, I did my research on what he had done with our motorsports and what he was doing with, the different race teams he was with and how well those teams are doing with him as a, car chief or, whatever his role was, and how they were doing better, not worse with him. And so we use this thing as a plug for Culture Index profiling. I had you do one, and it simple profile that tells you a little bit more about the person's behavior. When I got Andy's profile back, I was like, oh, no wonder. Now I get it. He's a meticulous, obsessed, meticulous, detail-oriented person, but he's also highly competitive. So I was like, okay, you've got a highly competitive profile, win, while being meticulous in doing so. And I'm like, well, that's a great combination. And I love working with Mike Dayton and his personality. I love people that are just people, and I love the whole team. So I just asked Andy, I said, hey, this is going downhill, not uphill. I see you're frustrated. And he said, I am. I'm, not happy. He was just helping, but he didn't want to help and be, and go backwards. And I said, well, I am finally in a position to do something beyond helping with a sponsor. And I'm interested in being serious about this. And I know you've done this before. And I don't know the whole story, whether you're completely happy and left great or you were burned and, all that. But if you have any interest, I'm interested in talking. And as Andy took over from his story, that he said took a while for him to figure out where it was at until, finally he said, well, I could do this or this. And, the question was, does he believe that, it would work out? So he said to me, I'll do this but I need X income, for my family. And I need at least a 2-year guarantee so that I'm not the idiot that leaves and you shut down 6 months into this. And I said to him, well, based on your profile, you can do a lot more successfully than just race. So as long as you're okay that if I guarantee to pay you for at least 2 years, that you're okay doing stuff other than racing. He goes, yeah, heck, for the paycheck you're agreeing to pay me, whatever. I'll stock shelves or one of your convenience stores, just pay me. And I said, well, that's only a backup plan. But I said, I can definitely make a 2-year run at this, and if the wheels fall off, we just have to know that at the end of 2 years, we're going to dismantle and go our own separate ways. But let's set a goal to get to the point by, the end of 2 years, we built a team successful enough, based on what we thought we had, to be running in the top 10. So, and then Andy, from that day on, when we joined forces and he made a few adjustments and timing was perfect, he had built his garage. We were going to rent something separate in Statesville, but his was perfect to get us started. It's a beautiful facility, and it allowed him not to drive, and he's got young kids, so it was perfect for him. And I'm like, I don't have to do the full season. We're not going to run for the champion, so we just talked about what we wanted to do, and we said we want to have fun racing. That's number one. And I said, I want to have fun, but you have to understand that part of the definition of fun for me, there are many things in that word. One of them is winning, because winning is fun. And I know I'm not saying we can win today, but if we're slowly moving toward that, that's fun. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like searching for a new car. The fun is finding the new car. Once you buy the car and drive a few times, you're bored. So I said, as long as we're always having that fun, reaching that goal, and it's, we enjoy doing this, let's do it. And then Annie just honestly blew me away with what he's done since day one, between smart investing, in equipment, organization, setup, working with the right people, his people skills. And, he just built it. And, as I got more confident, I spent more money, that smart money, capital investment on nicer hauler and things like that make us look like we are today. So, but, that's how it happened. Because honestly, if Andy had said, yeah, no, I'm going to go with, wherever Childress, or I'm going to go with, I forget what other offers he had, but, I'm going to do this, then I would have probably told Andy J, hey, look, next year I might sponsor you at Daytona again if you're going to run. And then that's it. And we wouldn't be talking. So if Andy hadn't said yes, because I knew, that this whole deal, when I say it's him, that's not what I mean at all. Racing is a team effort. I mean, team effort 1,000%. But, I knew Andy, if he wasn't part of that team, Andy Seiss, there was only so much that I could do to help Andy J. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So that's how we started doing this. So
what is the best thing about owning a race team?
The people. I mean, the people in the competition. If you like to compete, I mean, think about it. If you win a race, as little as emphasis people put on it someday, but you beat 30-something cars or whatever numbers out there, that each of them has a team of dozens or even smaller, from the small to the medium teams that have worked day and night to get that car to run as fast as possible. And you got on the track and you beat them all. So you beat one football team, you beat 33 football teams at once. So the competition and the people, the NASCAR people are very grounded, down to earth, salt of the earth, blue collar, not all, just different mixes, but as a whole, just a great group. And the sponsors involved, for the most part, are the same type of sponsors. They're not, Benetton from Ferrari, from F1, or, they're grounded sponsors that value, what, the relationship. And honestly, the event, NASCAR has done a great job with turning the weekends into a worthwhile event, because I don't always just do our races and leave, so it's very enjoyable, it's great. You can race, pack up, and then watch others race and talk to them, So, and I would say also, I'll add one more thing, meeting and starting to mingle with people that you admired, for a long time, and now being able to be in, near them. I'll give you an example with when we ran the Kansas race a couple days, and Corey Day had the trouble going into turn 3. He had the trouble that ended up with us in the wall, wrecked, and that was a frustrating moment, going over to the Hendrick Motorsports team, and we did argue with them. But, here I am arguing with Kyle Larson's crew chief. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so in the middle of the argument, I'm like, hey, I'm very mad at what your drivers just did, but I want to just say, hey, it is a pleasure to meet you. And I am so impressed with everything you've ever done. And I just, it is just a pleasure to be near you, screaming at you for what your driver just did. You think about the irony, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you're like, who am I yelling at right now? I'm yelling at Kyle Larson's crew chief, because I'm frustrated with what just happened. But then you walk away and it's not like, oh, I'm mad that happened. You're like, hey, I just got to talk with Kyle Larson's crew chief, and he knows who I am as that guy that was yelling at him, during the Kansas race. And he was a very calming factor and a very good person. So, and I mean that, and the whole team was, the whole Hendrick team was, but it's just the whole experience. So
next time on the Building of a Race Team, we continue our story as we complete the building of a race team.